Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of Could It Be podcast. Today we're sharing Carrie's story. At the time of recording this episode, it was the eve of Carrie's 4-year explant anniversary, and we're only a couple of days shy right now from my 1-year explant anniversary. I can't believe it's been a year, and also that we're up to episode 30. It's been an absolutely amazing ride, and I'm very grateful for all of the amazing women that I've met in the last few months through recording the episodes with guests on with me. Carrie's beautiful and she's such a lovely person, and just kind of put it out to the universe that she wanted to share her story, and someone recommended the podcast. So I'm thankful to whoever that was, because I feel like I've made another friend over in the US. I've got so many places that I want to travel to now because of meeting all of these amazing women. Not much to update you on my side of things. I will probably do another episode soon on how I'm tracking after seeing my amazing naturopath and how I'm feeling. But yeah, everything's traveling really well right now. So without further ado, we'll start Carrie's story. Enjoy. Wishing a very warm welcome to Carrie to the podcast today. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It's an
Thank
honor
you for
to be here with
joining
you.
me. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're joining us from today.
Great. So my name is Carrie Santiago. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I have been dealing with some health issues for a number of years, but I'm actually celebrating my 4-year explant anniversary tomorrow. So this is just incredible timing.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly. And because of the time difference here in Adelaide, it is actually your explant anniversary today. So happy anniversary.
Thank you so
And
much.
we're almost explant twins. My anniversary is coming up on the 27th of June for my 1 year. So yeah, so close.
Yeah, congratulations to you as well.
Thank you. So tell us about your initial reason for getting breast implants.
Well, I've reflected on this a bit, and I would say throughout my childhood, I was always on the heavy side and always had some insecurities about my body, just comparing myself to people around me. I always had extra weight on me and just was very self-conscious. And as I kind of grew through being a teenager and into my 20s, I did start to focus more on my health, and I was able to lose a pretty significant amount of weight. And then I ended up gifting myself implants for all the hard work that I did to get to my goal weight. I just felt like I had finally become more secure in how I looked, but that was one area that I felt was lacking. I just didn't feel balanced across my body, and I figured the implants would just help, like, kind of give me, the shape that I was looking for. And I think it was just always tying back to not having a lot of self-confidence and kind of being pressured at the same time, because I had a lot of friends around me who had gotten implants and they were encouraging me to do the same. And, everyone was saying they were completely healthy and pretty much why not? So that's how I kind of ended up with them.
And when was that? What year did you have your implants put in?
I want to say it was, that's a tough question. So I think it was around 2010 or 11.
Okay, no
Yeah.
worries. So how did you hear about breast implant illness and what were your symptoms?
hmm It was kind of interesting because after I got the breast implants, I felt really good about myself, and, I was putting myself out there a lot more. I had started dating, I had sort of a bad breakup, and then as time was ticking on, I was trying to balance working on my MBA and then growing my full-time career, and just had like a lot of stress and all these things coming at me while I was, trying to kind of balance having an education and then building a career, and then, trying to date and see where my romantic life would take me. And there were some symptoms that were popping up during this time, but they were very non-specific. And I didn't even know that they were tied into BII until everything turned into this perfect storm. So there were just random things that would happen. I was getting like electric shooting pains in my thighs when I would walk down the street. It would kind of like take my breath away. I'd have to stop and just take like a break. My toenails, I think, were one of the strangest symptoms. They started kind of growing out in layers, and there were horizontal lines on them. So then I would like go to the doctor for these weird things, and they're like, we can't really figure out what's going on. Then I started to get rashes on random places on my body. Sometimes I would get ulcers on the roof of my mouth. I was having a lot of acid reflux, so got put on medication for the acid reflux. They put me on magnesium for these sharp pains that I was having in my thighs. And then I was having like a lot of abdominal pain. So when I look back at my health record, I was going to the doctor in the ER for a lot of random things. And then, when you can see your Facebook memories, like, oh, on this day, I started to see I was sick all the time with a cold or a flu. And it never really occurred to me that that was unusual. But in about 2015, so this was 4 or 5 years after I got my implants put in, I remember sitting at work and I was overcome with this massive migraine down the back of my head. And it felt like there was water pouring over my head. It was just very strange nerve sensations. And I ended up going to the emergency room that day, and that really kicked off just the nightmare that became full blown BII. It went into like over 30 symptoms. I had to take leaves of absence from my work. And during this time, I was like anyone else, seeing this doctor, that doctor, bouncing to rheumatology, neurology, cardiology, because it was a constellation of symptoms all across my body. And everyone was saying, like, if your head hurts, your stomach can't hurt equally as bad. And then I started to think, wow, am I imagining all these things? Because how could I have gone from someone who was working out 5 days a week and doing all these things to my whole life had been turned upside down? And it took, I would say, a good year and a half past that point where I started to think maybe there's something more. I was looking into social media at that point because we get desperate for answers. And I stumbled across a post where a woman they started talking about Lyme disease. So then I was getting tested for Lyme disease like time and time again. It was always coming up like either unknown or negative. And I had gotten so bad that I had at-home nursing care, and the nurse who was assigned to me said, "This absolutely sounds like Lyme. You need to go see a Lyme specialist." So I started doing that, and by this time, social media is becoming more prominent, and you can just have all this information at your fingertips. But this woman had posted about how she had Lyme and she couldn't heal the Lyme until she got her breast implants out. And I was like, okay, that's a light bulb moment. But I went to my original plastic surgeon, which I feel like a lot of people do, and he said, absolutely not. It could not be the implants. Just address the Lyme and you'll be fine. So I'm losing time during this whole stretch because everyone's like doubting me, and it just kept getting worse and worse. So I treated Lyme hardcore on antibiotics for a whole year. Then I did the herbal route for about a year, and I just felt like as little bright spots that I would see where I would start to feel a little bit better, I would just keep crashing. And it just got to a point where I said, I've done everything else. I've gone to 30 and 40 doctors across 4 states. The one thing I have not done is take out my implants. So I found a group on Facebook, and then luckily got connected with a smaller group of women who are in my area. And it really just started to click from there. And I knew I was onto something. And even if I wasn't, I needed the peace of mind to just get them out.
Yeah, we kind of treat ourselves like, and in a respectful way, like a science experiment when it comes to that, though, don't we? Because I was the same. I had seen someone on social media post about her experience with breast implants and breast implant illness. And I had tried similar things. Like I hadn't seen as many specialists as a lot of people have, but I tried all sorts of vitamins and all sorts of natural ways to get through these weird symptoms. And I was like, I think I need to look at taking my implants out. And then it is basically a science experiment. You don't know
Hmm.
100% that it's going to heal until you go through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I was going to survive the surgery because I had lost so much time searching and I was continuing to get sicker and sicker, weaker and weaker. And I remember the night before the surgery thinking, I may not wake up from this, but I knew I had to do it because there was no other option at that point.
So talk us through what process you went through to end up having your surgery, how you chose a surgeon, that kind of thing. Anything that might help anyone that is in the lead up to looking into their own explant.
I guess the first thing is it's a huge investment when you do anything to your body, and just wrapping your mind around the fact that you've made this investment and you don't know if it's going to help or not, and you're paying then more to have them removed than you did to get them in. You don't wanna believe it, and I fought myself for a while, and I was trying to trust the experts around me saying, "No, it couldn't be your implants, it has to be something else," but you get to a point, like I said, of desperation where you've tried everything else, that's the one thing left to do, and even if it didn't help, just having the peace of mind, 'cause once you get that in your head and you know that there's something foreign in your body, you get really desperate. But as far as finding a surgeon, I absolutely did not have the surgeon who put them in take them out because he didn't believe me. He said, I can take them out, but I know it's not going to help you. I knew that was not the person I wanted going back into my body. But luckily, I was able to find a support group on Facebook with really supportive, incredibly inspiring women who I'm still connected with to this day. They were able to provide feedback on the different surgeons that they had looked into and who they explanted with. So it was a lot of research, and I'm just a big advocate of, looking and doing your own research because the surgeon for me may not be the surgeon for you, and you have to just trust your gut. So I did consultations with 3 surgeons. There were 2. I said I can't go wrong with either one. So I ended up choosing the one who was closest to me geographically because I know how I am and I didn't want to have a long drive or be stuck in a hotel. I just wanted to be back home as quickly as possible. And then if something were to have gone wrong, I wanted quick access to my surgeon. But I think it's just really important to do research on the different surgeons. You want to make sure that they're removing the implant in the proper way. And, there's controversy over what the right way is, but, there's really 2 routes to take. And I felt confident with my surgeon because you go in and you're like, it has to be end block. And he's like, no, he said, I can't say that I can do that until I actually go inside your body to see if it's even safe to do that. So he ended up doing, and he said that's always the goal, but it turned into a he removed them, but then he couldn't take them all out, like, with the full capsule intact. He ended up having to scrape my rib cage and cauterize, but he got everything out. So that's the most important thing, to make sure that you're getting all of that scar tissue out of your body during the surgery. So just research would be the key point I would make.
Definitely. I agree with you. I initially had looked into going to I don't think we have many surgeons here in Adelaide that do en blanc, and a lot of people do push that in some of the Facebook groups. And the wait just to get an appointment with him was 6 months, I think. And I was at a point where I was like, I can't keep living this way. Like my life was on hold. I am, impacting other people around me. I need to get this done as soon as possible. And I actually went to my initial surgeon, and she actually said it herself. I didn't ask about the capsulectomy side of things, but she's like, yeah, and we'll take your implants out and I'll make sure I get that capsule. And, when you do listen to, real specialists, like real knowledgeable specialists in the area, some of them will say that it's not always safe to get the full capsule out. It's best to do as whatever is possible to get as much of it out as they can, but you
Mhm,
can't always get all of it because, like you said, like you've been through, sounds pretty heavy, like having the scraping done and the cauterizing done when they're in there.
mhm.
you know, you don't want to go risking your life and puncturing something that they, you know, you could end up more sick if they do
Mhm.
more than they like safely can. So yeah, I
Exactly.
100% agree with you. It's not like, if possible, sure, on blanc it does leave a bigger scar as far as I'm aware, but yeah, there's other ways where you can recover well from it by having it done. Yeah, as much of a capsulectomy as possible, I guess.
Yes.
So the surgeon that you went to, did they have much to say when it came to BII?
hmm I actually love my surgeon for so many reasons, but I felt so validated. That was the first part when I went in. And the thing I really appreciated about him was that he did not always believe in BII. He had it proven to him because he had a few patients that were adamant that the implants were making them sick, and he at first didn't believe it. And they said, "I'm going to prove it to you." He would tell me and other people's stories about how, I think he had one patient who couldn't even walk. Like, she was coming into the office, she couldn't walk, and after the implants came out, she was able to walk again, and that sparked his attention. So then he started doing research, and then, the more of these explants that he was doing, he would start to see the real data behind it, that this is not just one or two people that just feel better, because, some people will say that it's just like placebo effect. It was so many women that he could not deny it anymore. So then he started educating women on the risks. He was educating them more than he normally would, to say, "Hey, I'll put the implants in, but these are all the things that may happen." And then he got to a point where he's really against putting implants in anyone. And he's become a huge advocate across the medical community, and putting out a lot of studies, like very legitimate studies that other professionals are listening to now. So I think just feeling validated, and I didn't have to explain myself or explain to him, this is not just anxiety. Yes, I'm anxious because I'm sick and no one's helping me. I don't believe that anxiety caused this whole whirlwind of impact. And he was very realistic with me. He said, "You may feel, you know, 50% better. Is that enough?" I said, "I will take 10% feeling better if it means getting at least one step closer to living a healthy life again."
You hear that so often where women are diagnosed with anxiety and depression and they're told they're paranoid about these symptoms. And that's really upsetting. And, you know, from what I'm hearing and reading about in the groups, there are women that do experience anxiety and depression, and that, like, there's the one side of it where they they do have it, like they have that as a condition, but then there's the other side of it, of where your body is constantly failing you and you don't know why. You're going to get to a point where you are anxious or depressed, like it's
Mhm.
going to happen. And it just makes me so sad that that's just kind of being thrown at them as a diagnosis
Yeah.
when, yeah,
You
I
get stuck in fight or flight. I believe your nervous system actually gets stuck in fight or flight because every single day, over days, months, years, something's wrong. Your body's attacking the foreign object. Like, you feel stressed out. You get trapped in that flight or flight mode. So of course, you're creating all this cortisol, you're creating inflammation in your body. You're going to be naturally anxious or depressed because your body is so overwhelmed.
absolutely, that's one thing that I've been sort of reading more into, the cortisol side of things. Like after my explant, I have gained weight and I'm exercising more than I ever used to, but
Mhm.
my my body physically would have been under so much stress, like exactly as you articulated just then. But I think also there's the emotional stress of, like, the years of, yeah, just feeling like, for me, people talk about the feeling they feel like they're dying, and for me, I just felt like my body was giving up on me. Now we understand why. Yeah.
I can completely relate to feeling like dying, and I articulated that countless times at my absolute worst. And I was one time in a unbreakable migraine cycle for over 7 months straight. It was 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I was in and out of the hospital countless times, getting hooked up to migraine cocktails. I was going in for infusions, just trying to break out of this head pain. And when you have any kind of pain for that stretch of time, sometimes you wonder, would it be more of a relief, to just not have to go through this anymore, because you just get so desperate. My hair was falling out. I couldn't do anything. I felt like no one was listening to me. I was hospitalized and I could not extend my hands. My legs felt like they were paralyzed. There's all these things happening to me, and you have very highly educated doctors coming in a room and saying all your lab work is fine, you have no problem. Well, then why am I here? Why can I not function? I am a career driven person. I don't want medication. I just want my life back. And
Mm.
to not be heard in that way is just such an emotional toll. And I don't really know what is worse. Is it the emotional toll or the physical toll? But it's very overwhelming. And it's not just overwhelming for the person experiencing it, but loved ones around who, they want to help. And when it first happens, it's like everyone kind of rushes to you. But then as people see that you're not getting better, or they don't understand why you're not getting better, and that, you don't even have a diagnosis, people start to question, and then they just kind of start to abandon you. So now you're dealing with like being abandoned by people who you need in the in the time of your life where you have never needed help more. But I think sometimes people get so uncomfortable and they just don't know what to do, that they walk away. So I was lucky to have my husband by my side 100%, but there are many people whose spouses leave them, their family leaves them, and they just don't have the will to try and seek help because they have no support. And I think that's why it's so important that there's platforms like yours, and there's support groups online. There's strangers who are more willing sometimes than your own family and friends to be right there with you and provide guidance on their experience and where to find resources and pick you up in your weakest times.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like it apart, like outside of the BIR community. It's, yeah, everyone that I've met and spoken to is just so empathetic, and they care and they want to help. Like, they've been through it, they understand what it's like. They understand what it's like to not be understood as well. And
Mhm.
yeah, that just, gives them that extra oomph, I guess, to make sure that, yeah, they help other people through it. And yeah, I'm
Mhm.
very, very humbled every time I speak to someone. I'm just, oh, like, you've been through something really horrible and yet you still have the energy to help other people through it. Like, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people who help me, and that's why I feel it's so important to help as many people as I can. And it's uncomfortable to share your story. It's sometimes uncomfortable for people to hear your story, but it's important. And I've had so many people in my network reach out to me, whether it was, professionally or personally, and they don't do it publicly most of the time. They watch what you're saying. They might see a story or see a post, and over time something starts to click, and then they reach out and say, "Hey, I see you've been sharing about this. Can you tell me more about it? I think I might have the same issue." And then they start to do their research. So I just want to plant a seed that if someone is experiencing mystery symptoms, just keep advocating, because you know your body more than anyone else knows your body, and you know when something is very wrong. And I don't care how many people told me that nothing was wrong, because I knew something was wrong and I was not satisfied with just accepting that that was the way I was supposed to continue living.
Yeah. Thank you for continuing to fight, because, you're now able to help people yourself the way that you've been helped by others.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. Talk us through when your explant surgery was and what recovery was like for you, especially considering the extra stuff that your surgeon had to do while they were in there.
So I had my explant in June 2019, and I would say obviously it's painful. So you come out and you feel kind of similar to when you had your implants put in. You feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest and you're wrapped so tightly that you can hardly breathe. And it's the same thing all over again. You can't use your arms to like sit yourself up, and you may have drains hanging off of you, and you feel foggy and nauseous and all these things. But I highly recommend like try to sleep in a recliner if you have access to one, or get like a body pillow, a wedge pillow. You want as like many pillows around you as possible. Staying hydrated, taking your medication. Hopefully the surgeon would give you a pain pump, because I feel like that definitely helped. Um, as far as the recovery, the biggest thing for me was 3 days after the implants came out, I was going to my follow-up appointment, and we were driving. Well, I was not driving. I was being driven to my appointment, and I could breathe so easily. And I never knew that I couldn't breathe very well until the oxygen was coming into my body. I was like, I didn't realize my nose was inflamed. There's so many things that you just get
Get used to over
get used
time.
to over time. And you just don't know that it's an issue until it's no longer an issue. I was like, I can breathe so comfortably right now. It was like I could take full deep breaths. My lungs, because you think about the implants are sitting on top of your lungs and your heart, like pushing down. And that was such a huge relief. My hair started growing back. My nails started growing long and strong. Those strange toenails that I talked about in the beginning, they are full healthy toenails now. So there was some disconnect with just growth in general, nails, hair, skin. I didn't realize how much like acne I had, and I just thought it was kind of normal. That went away. And then slowly, a lot of the other like very serious symptoms, primarily the migraines, which were by far the number one problem I had with the implants, the migraines dissipated. I rarely ever get a migraine now, and that has to be the biggest relief for me. But healing is not the same for everyone. I went through so many detox flares, and I think what isn't talked about enough is you get your implant out, you start to feel great, like I did on day 3. You want to just shout from the rooftops, I'm healed, like it's a miracle. But then once your body starts kind of catching up and getting stronger, and your detox pathways, it's like they're clogged. There's so much the body's trying to push out, because it's like, in my mind, I'm not a medical expert, but it's almost like, okay, we don't have to fight the problem anymore, but now we need to get all this stuff out. So it's like readjusting its resources, if you will. And if you're like me and a slow detoxer, that can be it can bring on like all the old symptoms again. And then you start to question, did this really do anything? Did I even make the right decision? But little by little, those flares should be getting better. But I'm 4 years explant tomorrow. And just this year is when I have felt the healthiest. I would hope that others can heal faster, but it really depends on how you're caring for yourself too. I feel like working with a functional doctor has helped me tremendously, because your body may be deficient in different nutrients, vitamins, minerals. There's so many things that you can do to kind of help your body along. But then other things might throw a wrench. I, had, I don't even want to say it out loud, but the thing that no one wants to talk about anymore, I got that twice. And then I had the long version the second time. And then I had mold toxicity. And that was such a random thing, because when we started working from home full time, we had a leak in our ceiling and we didn't know. So the room I happened to be working in, every time it rained, there was mold collecting literally right above my head. And I was breathing in mold for months on end. So it was like BII symptoms all over again until my functional doctor said, "Let's check for mold." I said, "Oh, there's no way. I don't have mold. My house is not that old." But sure enough, high mold toxicity. So then I had to address that. So I guess my point is that when you have the implants out, it just allows your body to be stronger in addressing anything else that you get hit with. So I can't imagine having implants and then mold toxicity on top of that, or other things on top of that. I don't know if my body would have been able to handle it, but everyone's healing is different. I say it's a roller coaster all the time, because you have a big high and then you have a dip, and then you're just like, when is this going to level out? But I think if you just focus on detoxing, proper nutrition, hydrating, just bring it all the way back to basics, just give your body what it needs to function. And I know I talked about Lyme a couple times. I believe many people have Lyme and their bodies are strong enough to just keep it dormant. I think I got Lyme as a child. I think I had ticks all over me. I lived in Minnesota. I believe I had Lyme my whole life, and it was just kept in check. But it was the implant and all these other things that turned into a perfect storm. You can put Lyme, like you can make it dormant if your body is strong enough. So just everyone's path is different.
Yeah, I've had a guest on the podcast before who did say that before she had her implants, her surgeon did say that, and this is here in Australia, this is years ago, that, if you're somebody who already has autoimmune conditions, that implants can, I think, exacerbate it. So that makes sense when it comes to Lyme disease. Lyme disease isn't, as far as I'm aware, it's not a recognised condition over here in Australia. So if anyone does go overseas and is bitten by a tick and then ends up with Lyme disease, they have to go overseas for treatment. We don't
Wow.
even have the treatment here for it. And we're pretty good medically, pretty advanced medically here, but because we don't have, as far as I'm aware, we don't have the ticks here that cause it, we don't see it as a medical diagnosis. But yeah, there are plenty of other autoimmune conditions that could be flared up by having implants because of the inflammatory response, I guess, that our bodies have once they're in. What sort of preparation did you do for your explant surgery?
Well, luckily I had a circle of women who had already gone before me, and they pretty much gave me all the tips of what I needed to do ahead of time. And I had like a quick reference guide, but if I think about the things that were most important to me, it was definitely all the pillows. And even when you have the implants out, having a pillow in the car with you to put in between the seatbelt and your body, like you may not think about that, but every bump on a road, you will feel excruciating pain.
Yes,
So
100%, because your boobs are more jiggly
yeah.
for one, and you've been cut open. That is so important that we share that. I was the same, and I only knew to pack a pillow because I've had surgeries where I've had my stomach muscles cut open to have ovarian cysts taken out, and having
Mhm.
a U-shaped pillow sitting around my tummy was just so comforting. And so I did the same when it came to my explant, and I'm so glad I did. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think that was definitely critical, but just all the basic things, like, you probably aren't going to be able to lift your arms to wash your hair. So you have to wash your hair thoroughly before any surgery, but just to kind of keep it in braids, I thought was pretty easy, because your hair can get really messed up by the time you're able to wash your hair and kind of lift your arms up. I had drains. I know not everyone has drains, but I had found this little belt that you can get it on Amazon, and you can put your drains in there, and it's like it goes around your waist. You put your little drains in there, and then that prevents them from kind of getting tangled up or pulling on whatever you might, you know, get in contact with. And then I think it even protects you when you're in the shower, because at some point you'll be able to, at least rinse off in the shower, and you want to make sure that, your drains are kind of covered, and, you're not exposing yourself to bacteria and things like that. But also just being prepared with you know, proper foods, and like I had Pedialyte next to me because you may not have someone to take care of you every second and you just want to have things next to you that you can grab easily. So I had like Pedialyte and some healthy snacks next to me. I had the wedge pillow. I had a like a pregnancy like body pillow that I leaned on. Definitely you don't always think about what clothes to wear. So I found these really comfy, like t-shirt material, zip up hoodies. And then, you don't have to really do much with your arms. You can just kind of like get into them and then you don't even always have to close it. Pants that you can easily pull up and down, um, warm socks, like all these things kind of seem basic, but they become very necessary when you're going through it. And then I think too, and the doctor can always recommend, but as my scars started healing, I was getting pretty itchy, so he said I could use Aquaphor and that kind of helped the itching go down. Yeah, that's pretty much all I did to prepare. And I made sure to take enough time off from work, knowing that I'm kind of a difficult case in a lot of ways. So I think I planned to take 2 full weeks off. And then I thankfully have the ability to work from home. I think I work from home for 2 weeks beyond that. And then I went back to the office and someone missed me and gave me a bear hug because they didn't know what I
Oh,
had just gone
no.
through. So
Oh, how was that?
it was awkward and uncomfortable. But what are you gonna do
Yeah. Oh,
at
well, it's
work?
nice to know that you missed when you're on leave. That's
Yes.
one good thing about that. Did you have a specific post-surgery bra that you had to wear when it came
Mhm.
to your surgery?
So I was put into a bra after the surgery. So I was put into a bra and then I had the ace bandage wrapped around top of that. And then once I was able to kind of go to my own bra, I just did the front close with the little hooks, or it might have Velcro. I found that to be the most comfortable when you're able to graduate.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it makes so much difference that you don't have to reach around the back or pull anything over your head. I loved my post-surgery bras. I didn't have a specific one that my surgeon recommended, but it was looking in the groups and I had purchased a couple already, but then someone in the group recommended one from a store that I didn't even think to shop at. In
mhm,
Australia, it's Best and Less, and they were so comfortable. Like, you've got to think of the fact that you need to get into it, but also just being comfortable. So having one that if it's got a zip, or even the hook and eye, like the little hook ones, you want something that then has the little flap at the bottom, so you don't have the
mhm.
pointy bit of the bra, like stabbing into your stomach. And for me, the one that I ended up wearing a lot of the time was slightly longer, so it didn't rub on my scars. The shorter ones did,
Okay.
so that kind of stuff is so important. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
but yeah,
I had
have
the little pads, the medical gauze pads. I didn't have a long, if I would have known that a long one existed, I would have gone that route. But I had just like those square gauze pads I would put underneath. Just like you said, you don't want anything rubbing on that area because it's so sensitive.
Yeah, and that would probably cause, not quite as nice a scar. I don't have to worry about my scars because like my boobs kind of sit over the scars, but you have some other people who have very visible scars, so you want to keep them as neat and possible if that's something that does, you know, is important to you, I guess.
I
Yeah.
totally agree.
How would you say your BII symptoms are now?
I would say they're night and day. So there's some lingering things that I have to deal with, but they have been so manageable. I would say I've had a good solid year where I've had very little hiccups. So I've had ongoing chest pain that kind of comes and goes, but I've had a full cardiology workup. They didn't find anything. That gave me peace of mind. Who knows where the chest pain's coming from? Sometimes I think, it could just be, nerves take a really long time to heal. Maybe I'm getting some zings in there. Maybe that will never heal. I don't know. But I think it's always important to just make sure there's nothing wrong and just not assume that everything's okay. So, uh, you know, some chest pain that comes and goes. That's typically kind of alarming. I've had some pain in my liver area that I've had checked out, and they said I have gallbladder sludge. So I just try to work with my functional doctor on things that I can do naturally to address those things. Dizziness, I still do have dizziness from time to time, but it is nowhere near the level that I had before. I used to have vertigo, and anyone who's experienced vertigo, it is completely debilitating. You don't know when it's going to let up. I was even having vertigo in the middle of the night of all things. I would wake up with vertigo if I would lift my head like an inch off the pillow. And that it was terrifying and I never want to go back to that place again. But I would say out of the 30 plus symptoms that I had when I had BII, I'm maybe dealing with 5. Like I had talked about acid reflux. I now only get acid reflux like a normal person if I eat something spicy or if I eat late at night. Like I'm not having acid reflux 24 hours a day. So it's just really incredible to see not only the symptoms improve, and it has taken me 4 years, but also when you start to look at your lab work, and I know a lot of us have gotten tons of lab work, but you mentioned autoimmune a few minutes ago. My ANA, the autoimmune marker, that's the broad autoimmune marker, it was positive since at least 2017. And I don't know what it was before that, but it was positive, positive, positive. It is now negative. And I know these things can kind of come and go, but I believe that if something is positive for years and then now it's negative after, and the only change has been the implant out, that has to be a positive sign. So, symptom improvement, improvement on labs, that's real science. That's nothing that people can really argue with.
So, what is one thing that you wish you knew before getting breast implants?
I wish I would have known what could possibly happen. And I know somewhere in the flyer or whatever information I was given before implants, I'm sure there was some small disclaimer in there that said, something bad could happen. But if I would have read or heard or seen any of the stories that I have become aware of since going through this myself, I would not have gotten the implants. So I feel that education is key. Knowledge truly is power. And then you can decide if you want to take that risk or not. I've had people say, "Oh, well, I know breast implant illness is a thing, but most people don't get it." Well, do you want to which one do you want to be one of the few people that do get it? Because if you do get it, and in my mind, everyone will get it. It's just a matter of time and how it presents and how the body's able to cope with it depending on their health situation. And if you're predisposed to things, like you said before, is it really worth the risk? So, having more information, knowing the serious consequences so that I could have made an informed decision is something that I truly wish I would have known.
Yeah, and like knowing about it, like going back to what you were saying about, if you still make the decision to get breast implants, know that it's expensive. Like
Mhm.
I was lucky that it wasn't for me, but I do, I know that it can cost upwards of $8,000 just to have the explant done. That's not including a lift, or any other, you hear of people having to have their muscles reconstructed, that kind of thing. Like it's an expensive surgery. So, you might have the money there to have the implants in, but you need to be ready to have that money there in case you need them out, because you don't want to lose years of your life like we did
Mhm.
because you don't have the money to have them taken out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just one thing that someone else, Brandy from another podcast, mentioned to me, that,
Mhm.
if you get them in, have the money there to get them out, because you just don't know if it is going to happen to you.
And I don't think it's just the cost of the explant that people always consider, because when I think about all the literally tens of thousands of dollars that I did not have just laying around, the money that I spent trying to figure out what was wrong with me, all the supplements, all the road trips. Like I said, I wasn't getting answers in Pennsylvania. I went to New Jersey. I went to Maryland. I went to Connecticut. You get desperate. You want to see any doctor that you think can help you. It's the gas mileage, it's the hotel visits, it's the supplements, it's overhauling your diet. And, like we were talking about before we jumped on, organic food costs more. When you start to add up all these things, and a lot of times you run out of solutions in traditional medicine and you start to look for more holistic options. Well, unfortunately, your insurance is not going to cover that. So just to do an intake with a proper holistic doctor, usually that's like more than $500 just for the first visit. And then depending on how sick you are, every appointment could be at least $150. And all the lab tests that they do, blood work, urinalysis, all the different tests are not covered by insurance. So all of that is out of pocket. You can drive yourself completely into debt just trying to figure out what's wrong with you. And then to exhaust all of that and then say, okay, it's an implant. Now it cost me $7,500 to get my implants out, and I didn't do a lift. But I know of women who have paid sometimes $20,000 for the surgery, depending on what reconstruction has to be done.
Yeah. I feel like more needs to be done to look into regulating the cost because, yeah, like some of the prices that I see here in the Australian groups just vary so much from one surgeon to the next for the same surgery. And, you know, I'm just really worried about some surgeons that aren't genuine, then, capitalizing on the fact that, there are a lot of people that are going to be going through this surgery in the next few years. So, do your research. Like you went to 3 surgeons. I went to my original one, luckily, because it worked out well for me, but it doesn't always work out well for everybody. But, do your research for sure.
Yeah.
Now, if you could go back to your younger self pre-implants, what would you tell her?
I'm trying to not get emotional. I'm sorry.
It's okay if you do.
I think I would just tell myself that I'm not just good enough. Like I am enough in every way. And there's nothing that I could put in my body that would make me any better of a person or a friend or a family member, a spouse, that it's just unnecessary. And the pain is not worth your appearance. So I would just wish that I had more confidence and I would have believed in myself more and not tried to fit in with all these standards that we see around us, because people come in all shapes, sizes, as they say, and we're all beautiful in our own way, and we don't need to adhere to all these unnecessary standards that are presented to us and that we see every single day. And a lot of the stuff that we see on social media is not even real. I mean, there's filters, there's photoshopping, like the things that we see usually aren't even realistic. And the cost and the pain and the suffering, and time again, I have seen that, we do these modifications and it doesn't make us feel any better about ourselves because we have not addressed the root of why we're insecure. And I think that healing has to come from within.
Yes, definitely. There's someone I've spoken to recently. It might be an episode that I'm still yet to release, who was like, if I had spent the money that I used on breast implants on seeing a professional and talking through my insecurities, this wouldn't have all happened. But we didn't know it at the time. So many of us beat ourselves up about making that decision, but we thought we were doing the right thing at the time. There was external stuff, like you mentioned, a lot of your friends were having implants and it just seemed normal. We don't know what the next few years were holding for us. So yeah, very powerful words from you. Thank you. To anyone that is beating themselves up over this decision, please don't. You can right it by helping people like we are and having the implants removed and healing from that, and share that with one person, and you don't know the ripple effect that that's going to have on someone else deciding not to get them.
I totally agree. That's the one silver lining, is just using your voice to help someone else not go through that same pain and suffering.
So where can anyone listening to the episode today follow along with your story?
I do try to keep my Instagram and my Facebook up to date as much as possible. So can you just tag me on the video? Does that make sense? And I'm happy to connect with anyone on any of these topics. And if there's any advice that I can share, I'm always willing to talk to anyone about any of the struggles that I have gone through. And I always say I don't know all the answers. I'm continuously learning. There's always some nugget of information that we can pick up from someone else's experience. So I think back to when I knew nothing. It was just an idea of, could this be part of my picture that I need to figure out? And it was just all the little seeds that people planted before me that really sparked my interest in researching. So now that I'm so far past that point, sometimes I forget that, there was a time that I knew nothing about breast implant illness, and some things that just seem automatic or natural to me may not be as obvious to others. So anything I can do to help, I definitely want to do that. I want to give back. I don't want anything in return. It's just really, this is the right thing to do. And I would not have been able to heal unless someone before me was brave enough to share their story.
Yeah, hats off to all the women that take that step to share their story, because it's why we're both where we are today. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for joining us on your Friday night, and happy explant anniversary for tomorrow. And I'll pop Carrie's details into the show notes so that you can reach out to her or give her a follow, just so that you can keep an eye on her story.
Thank you so much for having me.
This podcast shares my own experience and research. I'm not a medical or health professional. You can find me on Instagram at CouldItBeII podcast. Thank you to my incredibly talented partner Jacob Tengdale for the intro and outro music. All recording, editing and artwork is done by me. Thank you for listening.